What if I told you that everything you believed about winter life on the Great Plains is untrue? It is commonly believed that the harsh winter months, with their biting, icy winds and endless deep snows, inevitably brought all human activity to a complete standstill. Many believe that indigenous peoples simply fell into a kind of hibernation, trying to survive the bitter cold in their fragile dwellings. But in the harsh historical reality, this dark time of year became a period of the strictest and most incredibly complex social organization. The tribes did not simply surrender to the mercy of the merciless elements, but actively and skillfully resisted them every single day. Preparations for the long winter began as early as the warm autumn. During the mass hunt for huge herds of bison, people stockpiled tons of dried, nutritious meat, which was guaranteed to last until late spring. With the onset of the first serious cold snap, the vast nomadic camps would move from open areas and retreat deep into sheltered river valleys. There, dense thickets of tall trees created a reliable natural barrier against the deadly northern blizzards. In such sheltered lowlands, the life of the Indian tribe bustled no less than during the hot, sunny summer. Each member of the community was assigned a specific role to maintain the common order. The tribes organized their daily lives in such an ingenious way that every tiny detail of the camp served a single purpose. All their efforts were focused on a strict economy and the conservation of scarce resources in the harshest climatic conditions. Women skillfully sewed together additional layers of thick bison hides to create impenetrable thermal insulation. Watch this video to the end, and you'll learn how the unique architecture of snow barriers and the efficient internal logistics of traditional tipis allowed entire settlements to thrive in the midst of the endless, icy wasteland. I will reveal the most closely guarded secret of indigenous winter planning. The selection of a site for a long-term camp began long before the first serious frosts and relied on precise knowledge of the terrain. Elders sought out deep river valleys or areas with dense strips of forest capable of effectively breaking the flow of icy winds. A properly selected natural landscape reduced the speed of air currents by nearly half, creating a natural protective dome over the entire future settlement. The process of setting up dwellings followed strict aerodynamic rules, which every family strictly adhered to. Each structure was positioned so that its entrance always faced east, directly toward the rising sun. This well-thought-out spatial arrangement allowed them to completely avoid the direct impact of the north and west winds, which carried the bulk of the drifting snow. The morning sun's rays warmed the entrance area more quickly, helping the residents begin their daily tasks as soon as the first warmth arrived. Preparing the foundation for the teepee required significant physical effort and a meticulous approach to leveling the surface. Snow on the selected site was cleared down to the bare ground, and the frozen soil was further compacted to create a solid foundation. A thick layer of dry grass or small shrubs was laid over the prepared site, serving as the first line of insulation against the freezing ground. This multi-layered cushion prevented cold from penetrating from below and provided a dry surface for further interior construction. Securing the structure in winter conditions differed radically from summer encampments in its enhanced reliability. Long wooden stakes were driven deep into the ground at a specific angle, providing maximum resistance to gusty winds. A high earthen embankment was built around the entire outer perimeter of the dwelling, which was further reinforced with heavy stones and packed snow. This protective embankment completely prevented drafts from entering beneath the roof and gave the entire structure incredible stability. The selection of materials for the winter covering of the teepee required special attention to the quality and thickness of the raw materials used. For winter camps, the heaviest and densest hides were selected, having undergone a special multi-stage treatment to increase their durability. The fabric was sewn in such a way as to minimize the number of seams through which frosty air could penetrate. The upper smoke vents were equipped with extended poles for more precise draft control in the face of shifting winter blizzards. The inner lining of the teepee, known as the dew canopy, played a key role in the insulation system. This additional fabric was attached to the poles at human height and extended all the way to the ground, tucked under the sleeping areas. An air layer formed between the outer covering and the inner canopy, functioning on the principle of a modern thermos. Cold air descended through this layer without entering the living area, providing the necessary draft for the central hearth. The architecture of the winter camp represented a perfect balance between the use of natural resources and a deep understanding of physical processes. I wonder how this topic is perceived in different parts of the world. Where are you from, and do you agree with the arguments presented? Write about this in the comments. Your opinion is truly important to our community. Be sure to subscribe to our channel so you don't miss new amazing historical discoveries and detailed analyses of past technologies. Are you ready to learn the truth about the temperature inside traditional plains dwellings? In the center of each teepee was a hearth, which served not only as a source of light, but also as the main heating source for the entire dwelling. The fire was built in a small recess lined with dense river stones, capable of storing and releasing heat for a long time. The correct placement of this hearth ensured the even distribution of heated air throughout the entire interior space. Smoke control was a true art, requiring constant attention to the direction of the outside wind. The two upper vents of the teepee were adjusted using special long poles attached to the outside of the tall cone. When the direction of the blizzard changed, these valves were immediately repositioned to create the necessary draft and prevent smoke from entering the living area. This dynamic ventilation system ensured a supply of fresh air while maintaining a comfortable temperature inside the shelter. The river stones surrounding the fire served as a kind of heat reservoir throughout the long winter night. During the day, they actively absorbed the energy of the open flame, and after sunset, they began to slowly release the accumulated heat into the surrounding space. This technology allowed for maintaining a comfortable temperature inside the shelter, even after the active burning of the firewood had completely ceased. The efficiency of the stone heat reflectors was so high that the water in the birch bark containers did not freeze until morning. The doorway was closed with a special, heavy hide, which was securely fastened from the outside above the entrance itself. Along the edges, this thick door curtain was weighted down with wooden slats to ensure the tightest possible fit against the teepee's main material. To enter, a person had to lift the lower edge of the hide and quickly slip through the narrow gap that formed. This well-thought-out design minimized the loss of heated air as the settlement's inhabitants constantly moved about their business. The floor of the dwelling required additional insulation to create a proper barrier between the frozen ground and the living space. On top of a base layer of dried grass, woven mats made of willow twigs were laid, providing additional rigidity and relative dryness. These mats were easy to clean of snow tracked in from the street and prevented the formation of unpleasant slush inside the warm room. A dry floor was essential for maintaining overall comfort and the ability to move around the cone with ease. Maintaining a constant temperature required round-the-clock attention and incredible discipline from every inhabitant of the teepee. Even a small mistake in adjusting the smoke vents could lead to the rapid cooling of the entire carefully prepared interior. How difficult do you think it would be for a modern person to adapt to such a strict and demanding temperature regime? In the next chapter, you will learn about the ingenious hidden storage system that allowed these settlements to be completely independent of the vagaries of winter weather. A secret passed down from generation to generation reveals the true power of indigenous people's winter stores. The creation of underground caches for food storage began during the first autumn frosts, when the soil was still workable. Choosing a location for such a storage site required knowledge of the soil composition, as excessive moisture could quickly destroy all the stored provisions. Dry, sandy elevations within the camp, out of reach of spring meltwater, were considered ideal. The process of digging a pit often required first thawing the topsoil by lighting small local fires. The storage pit had to be deep enough to reach below the frost line and ensure a stable, cool temperature. The shape of the cache usually resembled a wide jug with a narrow neck, which minimized the surface area exposed to the cold outside air. This design allowed for the maximum amount of food to be stored while minimizing the time required to camouflage the top opening. The finished pemmican was packed into special sturdy bags sewn from thick, raw tanned hides of pre-treated bison skins. The mixture was packed as tightly as possible to prevent the formation of any air pockets, which would contribute to the gradual oxidation of the fat. Once filled, the opening of the bag was tightly bound with strong sinew and additionally sealed with hot lard to ensure the seam was completely airtight. A single such tightly packed container could weigh several dozen kilograms and provide enough energy to sustain an entire family for many weeks. The organization of space inside the underground cache followed a strict logic of accessibility and frequency of use for different types of food. At the very bottom were strategic reserves of pemmican in heavy sacks, intended for consumption at the very end of the long winter. Above these were stacked bundles of jerky, dried roots, and bundles of medicinal herbs, which might be needed at any moment. Each category of supplies was separated from the others by layers of dry grass, making it easy to navigate the storage area even by touch. In addition to underground storage areas, the camp often used tall wooden platforms to store foods that needed to be frozen. On these platforms, exposed to the elements, large cuts of meat were dried. The smooth support posts kept them out of reach of rodents. The icy wind acted as a natural preservative, quickly freezing excess moisture out of the fibers and turning the product into a solid block. The combination of underground cellars and open-air freeze-drying racks ensured maximum diversification of food risks throughout the entire winter. Underground storage facilities guaranteed the community's survival even during the longest periods of endless snowstorms. Properly prepared pemmican retained its unmatched nutritional properties for many months without the slightest sign of decay or spoilage. This unique food security technology became the unshakable foundation of the Great Plains peoples' prosperity in harsh climatic conditions. Like this video if you were impressed by such an incredibly well thought out and reliable system for long-term storage of vital supplies. Guess how long it took to create this unique cold weather gear that saves lives in the most bitter frosts? The process of making winter clothing began long before the first snowfalls and required the highest level of craftsmanship in working with materials. Only hides harvested in late autumn were used for winter garments, when the animal's fur was at its thickest and longest. Preserving this warm undercoat was the primary task of the craftsmen, who employed the most complex tanning techniques without using harsh chemicals. The primary method of preparing the material was traditional brain tanning, which gave the hides incredible softness and remarkable flexibility. This lengthy procedure involved repeatedly rubbing in special emulsions, after which the hide was kneaded by hand for a long time and stretched over wooden frames. The result was a material that did not harden in severe cold and provided excellent protection against the biting, icy wind. Properly tanned winter leather surpassed many modern synthetic fabrics in its insulating properties, while retaining the ability to breathe. Particular attention was paid to the design of winter footwear, which differed radically from lightweight summer versions due to its multi-layered construction. Winter moccasins were sewn with the fur facing inward, and their soles were additionally reinforced with pieces of the thickest, untreated rawhide. The roomy cut of such footwear allowed for the use of inner liners made of soft down or additional dried insulating grass. This airspace inside the moccasin was the main secret to keeping feet warm during prolonged contact with a frozen surface. The problem of shoes getting wet in wet snow was solved by applying thick layers of melted animal fat to the outer surface of the seams. This natural waterproofing agent created a reliable water-repellent film that prevented moisture from penetrating the inner fur layers. Every evening, the moccasins were carefully cleaned of clumped snow and placed near the hearth to dry slowly and evenly. Proper shoe care was a vital daily ritual, as frostbite on the feet meant certain loss of mobility. To protect their hands, they used voluminous mittens, which were often connected by a long leather cord looped around the neck. This simple yet ingenious detail allowed them to instantly remove the mittens for delicate work without risking losing them in deep snow. The inside of the mittens was lined with the softest, fluffiest fur, providing instant warmth for frozen fingers after working in the cold. Mittens were always made slightly oversized to ensure there was enough warm air inside to maintain a comfortable temperature for the hands. Winter clothing represented the pinnacle of craftsmanship, where every stitch served the sole purpose of retaining vital heat. Layering and the right choice of materials allowed people to stay out in the freezing open air for hours on end without the risk of freezing. Could you wear such thick and heavy garments every day during your routine daily work? In the next chapter, you will learn exactly how routine duties were distributed within the camp to maintain constant order and ensure survival. Maintaining the functioning of a large camp in the harsh winter conditions was a complex mechanism where every detail mattered immensely. The morning began before dawn with a mandatory inspection of the teepee's condition and the clearing of the outer walls of snow that had fallen overnight. This routine procedure prevented the dangerous accumulation of heavy snow, which could damage the structure of the dwellings or block the ventilation openings at the top. The coordinated efforts of the inhabitants allowed them to quickly get the camp up and running and clear the way for further safe movement. The most important task of the morning was to replenish fuel supplies, which were consumed in enormous quantities to heat each cone. Groups set out into the nearby forest to gather dry branches and fell dead trees using sturdy stone axes. Transporting heavy bundles of firewood through deep snow required immense physical effort and the use of special sleds made from long wooden poles. The gathered fuel was carefully sorted by size and dryness, then neatly stacked near the entrance to each dwelling. Working with tools took up a significant portion of the time, as severe frosts made many materials brittle and prone to rapid breakage. Bone scrapers and stone tips required constant sharpening and careful handling, especially during sharp fluctuations in outdoor and indoor temperatures. Before use, any bone tool was always warmed by the fire to restore its natural flexibility and prevent microcracks from forming. Broken tools were repaired immediately to avoid a shortage of tools at the critical moment when severe weather struck. The preparation of threads and binding materials was a continuous process, carried out primarily in a warm room near the central hearth. Dried tendons were kneaded by hand for a long time and carefully separated into the finest fibers, which were then twisted into strong, long cords. These homemade ropes were absolutely indispensable for mending torn clothing, repairing snowshoes, and reinforcing weakened wooden house frames. The constant availability of ready-made binding materials was considered an indicator of good household organization within each individual family during the winter. Wooden utensils were crafted during long evenings, once the main physical work outdoors had been fully completed. Using charcoal and bone chisels, sturdy pieces of wood were shaped into comfortable bowls, deep spoons, and spacious trays for food. This painstaking process required incredible patience, as a single awkward movement could split the workpiece, ruining the craftsman's many hours of hard labor. The finished items were carefully sanded with coarse sand and treated with hot fat to protect the wood from absorbing moisture and cracking. Weapon maintenance was considered a top priority, directly linked to the safety of the entire camp and the success of any defensive or hunting operations. Boughs were stored in special leather cases away from the direct heat of the fire so that the wood would not dry out and lose its elasticity. Daily tasks were distributed so that no one was left without a useful and productive activity for the benefit of the group. This continuous chain of routine duties created a steady rhythm of life that prevented people from falling into despondency due to prolonged isolation. Constant activity and the visible results of collective labor sustained the settlement's high morale even during the darkest winter months. The strict hierarchy of tasks was not merely a rule, but the only possible way to survive the harsh winter without critical losses. Here is what happens behind the closed doors of the teepee as darkness falls. When the outside temperature drops to critically low levels, sunset served as a signal to completely shut down the camp and switch all life support systems to energy-saving night mode. The door flaps were lowered and pressed tightly to the ground with heavy objects to completely prevent the icy night drafts from entering the interior. The external smoke vents were closed almost completely, leaving only a narrow slit for smoke to escape from the slowly smoldering central fire pit. The process of preparing the hearth for a long night, known as banking the fire, was a complex and extremely responsible procedure. The burning coals were carefully raked into a tight pile at the very center of the stone circle and covered with a thick layer of warm ash. This ash cushion blocked the free flow of oxygen, causing the coals to smolder very slowly and evenly, rather than burn with an open flame. This method allowed the high temperature inside the stone hearth to be maintained until morning, while consuming an absolute minimum of precious fuel. The problem of condensation freezing inside the teepee reached its peak during the coldest pre-dawn hours of a long winter night. Moisture from the breath of the sleeping people rose upward and instantly crystallized on the chilled walls of the inner canopy, forming a thick layer of frost. At the slightest gust of wind, these tiny ice crystals could fall down, creating an unpleasant sensation of cold drizzle inside the dwelling. It was impossible to combat this phenomenon directly, so sleeping areas were additionally covered with pieces of waterproof leather to protect against the frost. The soundscape of the night camp differed radically from the noisy daytime, with its incredible, almost ringing, frosty silence. The deep snow absorbed the sound of footsteps perfectly, and the thick walls of the teepee reliably insulated internal noises from the cold outside world. The only constant companion of the night was the howl of the piercing wind, which crashed against the dense rows of cones and rustled against the leather. This silence was broken only by the occasional crackling of cooling stones in the hearth or the muffled cough of one of the sleeping inhabitants. Securing the morning's water supply required special ingenuity, as any liquid would freeze in the unheated room within a matter of hours. Leather water bags were hung on special tripods in close proximity to the night's fire, smoldering beneath the ashes. The heat radiating from the embers and heated stones prevented the water from turning into solid ice, keeping it in a liquid state. This foresight allowed them to start the early morning with hot broth without wasting precious time on the long process of melting snow from the street. Nightlife in the camp was a constant struggle to preserve precious heat until the saving pale dawn. The silence of the sleeping settlement concealed the tense vigil of those who tirelessly monitored the condition of the central, life-saving hearth. Have you ever wondered how much daily effort it takes just to keep a fire going throughout the long, months-long winter nights? In the next chapter, you'll learn exactly which tools allowed people to work effectively with deeply frozen materials and solid ice. Adapting to winter conditions required the creation of a very specific set of tools capable of withstanding extreme stress at sub-zero temperatures. Ordinary tools often proved useless when it came to working with frozen wood, solid ice, or frozen ground. Craftsmen were forced to rethink traditional methods of toolmaking, emphasizing massiveness, durability, and resistance to sudden temperature changes. As a result, unique devices emerged that were used exclusively during periods of deep snow and severe, unrelenting plains frosts. To break through thick river ice, massive ice picks were used, consisting of heavy stone tips securely fastened to long wooden shafts. Striking with such a tool required great physical strength and proper technique to prevent the stone from shattering upon hard contact with the ice. The creation of snow trenches and the clearing of the area from constant snow drifts were carried out using wide shovels carved from bison scapulae. This bone had an ideal natural shape for scooping up large volumes of light snow and was strong enough to cut through dense snow crusts. A short, comfortable wooden handle was attached to the bone base, allowing a person to work in a half-crouching position inside the narrow camp corridors. The lightness of the bone shovel made the snow-clearing process less exhausting, allowing them to keep the pathways clear after every new blizzard. Heavy loads were transported across the snow-covered plain using toboggans, flat sleds without the classic protruding runners. This design consisted of several wide planks fastened together with crossbars and gently curved upward at the front. The toboggan did not sink into the loose snow, but glided easily over the surface, evenly distributing the weight of the entire load placed on it. Achieving the correct curve required prolonged steaming of the wood over a fire, followed by rigidly fixing the shape until the material had completely cooled. Special bone awls, distinguished by their particular thickness and the incredible sharpness of their tips, were used for weaving snowshoes and repairing winter gear. Piercing, multi-layered frozen leather required immense effort, so the handles of such awls were made massive to allow for a comfortable grip with the entire palm. The tool's tip was regularly sharpened on rough stones to maintain perfect smoothness and avoid tearing the precious threads during work. Possessing a high-quality awl was considered a vital necessity for any woman responsible for keeping her family's wardrobe in perfect condition. The use of plant resins as winter glue required a complex heating process and precise application in the freezing air. The resin was mixed with fine charcoal and dry grass fibers, forming a durable composite mass resistant to severe freezing. Before application, the mixture was heated thoroughly in special stone bowls, and the parts to be joined were preheated by the fire for better adhesion. This frost-resistant glue was used to seal wooden utensils, secure stone tips, and perform complex repairs on damaged wooden sleds. Careful treatment of tools was considered paramount, as the loss or breakage of an important tool could spell disaster. During downtime, all equipment was thoroughly cleaned of snow and ice, wiped dry, and stored in secure leather cases. It was strictly forbidden to leave tools out in the open, where they could be buried by snow or damaged by a sudden drop in nighttime temperatures. The orderliness of tool storage reflected the highest level of self-discipline, without which it was impossible to survive in the harsh realities of the winter plains. An understanding of the unique challenges of working with frozen materials distinguished the indigenous peoples of the plains as unrivaled experts in survival under cold conditions. They did not struggle against nature, but rather subtly adapted their technologies to the harsh and uncompromising winter rules dictated by it. The creation of reliable tools from readily available raw materials demonstrated the human mind's remarkable ability to find elegant engineering solutions to the most difficult everyday challenges. This technological arsenal ensured the smooth functioning of the camp, transforming the hostile, icy wasteland into an environment quite suitable for life. Supplying the vast camp with clean, fresh water during periods of severe frost became one of the most labor-intensive and complex daily tasks. Open bodies of water were covered by a thick shell of ice, which had to be broken through with heavy tools to access the life-sustaining, deep-flowing water. Working on the ice required extreme caution, as the severe cold made the surface slippery, and falling into the water meant certain frostbite. Locations for the ice holes were chosen with the strength of the underwater current in mind, so that the water would not freeze too quickly after each collection cycle. The ice water drawn from the hole was transported to the camp in special, spacious buckets sewn from thick, untreated rawhide. These containers had a wide base and a tapered neck, which prevented the liquid from spilling excessively while being carried along uneven, snow-covered paths. To prevent the water from freezing on the way back to the dwelling, the porters had to move as quickly as possible without making long stops. The frozen rims of the leather buckets were regularly thawed by the fire to restore their flexibility and prepare them for the next arduous journey. Storing water supplies inside the teepee required a thoughtful approach to temperature control and choosing the right, safe location. The containers were placed at an optimal distance from the central hearth, close enough so that the water wouldn't form a crust of ice but not right next to the flames. The water was always covered with tight-fitting lids made of wood or leather to protect it from flying ash and household debris. Maintaining the purity of drinking water was critically important for preventing the spread of stomach infections in the cramped conditions of winter living. The process of purifying and disinfecting collected water often involved mandatory boiling using the hot stone method. Smooth river stones were heated in the hearth until red hot, and using special wooden tongs were lowered directly into a leather vessel containing water. The liquid boiled almost instantly, destroying any possible bacteria and making the water completely safe for consumption by all family members. Dried leaves or pine needles were often thrown into the boiling water to give the drink a pleasant taste and enrich it with vitamins essential for health. Water consumption in winter was strictly rationed, as every drop was obtained at the cost of hard, collective physical labor. People drank in small portions, trying to quench their thirst as much as possible with the minimum amount of liquid, stretching their stored supplies for as long as possible. Water for washing and hygiene was used extremely sparingly, often replaced by wiping down with clean, dry, crunchy snow. This forced frugality fostered a deep respect for water resources, which remained with community members throughout their lives. Natural springs that never froze were of particular value if they happened to be near the campsite chosen for wintering. The water in such springs always remained liquid thanks to constant movement and natural geothermal heating from the Earth's depths. Discovering such a spring was considered a stroke of luck, and the entire logistics of supplying the camp with fresh, clean water were often organized around it. However, such springs were a rarity across the vast Great Plains, and more often than not, people had to rely solely on their own efforts. The attitude toward water in the winter camp vividly demonstrated the incredible value of simple resources, the procurement of which posed no difficulty during the warmer months. The icy river dictated its own harsh rules, forcing people to display miracles of endurance and ingenuity for the sake of a sip of clean, fresh water. This daily routine strengthened the character and physical resilience of the inhabitants, making them incredibly resilient to any hardships and deprivations. Their successful overcoming of water supply challenges was yet another testament to the indigenous people's phenomenal ability to survive under any extreme circumstances. Moving through deep snow posed one of the most serious threats to the mobility and survival of the winter camp's inhabitants. Simply walking on loose snowpack led to instant exhaustion, as a person would sink waist-deep with every step taken. To solve this problem, a unique design of snowshoes was developed, allowing body weight to be evenly distributed over a large area of the soft surface. This ingenious invention transformed insurmountable snowdrifts into white high-speed trails, perfectly suited for quick and safe travel. The frame of classic flat snowshoes was made of flexible and durable ash wood, which was steamed for a long time and bent into the shape of a wide teardrop. Inside the wooden frame, a complex network of tightly woven raw leather straps was stretched, forming a reliable yet light and resilient supporting platform. The size of the snowshoes was selected individually. Wide and long models were made for loose forest snow, while shorter and narrower ones were used for hard-packed snow. Proper balancing of the snowshoe allowed the front part to easily lift off the snow with each step, without sinking into deep drifts. Navigating in the conditions of a winter whiteout, when the earth and sky merge into a single endless fog, required phenomenal visual memory and keen intuition. Experienced trackers could read the terrain by the subtlest changes in wind direction and the shape of snow drifts left on the hard crust. They memorized the locations of individual dead trees, the outlines of distant hills, and even the characteristic bends of frozen riverbeds hidden beneath the snowdrifts. Losing one's bearings in a blizzard meant certain death, so the art of navigation was considered one of the most valuable and respected skills in the tribe. The use of toboggans to transport goods along snow trails significantly expanded the community's logistical capabilities during the harsh winter months. These flat sleds were loaded with firewood, hunted meat, or harvested ice, and could be easily pulled by a single person along a pre-established, firm track. Reading tracks in the snow was an integral part of winter navigation, providing vital information about movements across the vast surrounding territory. An experienced eye could distinguish a fresh track from an old one by the degree of crumbling at the edges of the indentation and the density of the snow crystals compressed inside. Based on the depth of the indentation and the distance between the prints, trackers could unerringly determine the weight, speed, and level of fatigue of the person who left the tracks. This knowledge was used both for successfully tracking prey and for preventing the sudden appearance of unwanted guests near the camp. The ability to move freely through deep snow demonstrated the complete dominance of engineering ingenuity over complex and unforgiving natural conditions. Snowshoes and toboggans were not merely tools, but ingenious extensions of the human body, adapted to the unique conditions of the winter Great Plains. This freedom of movement supplied the camp with necessary resources and prevented the community from becoming trapped in a snow trap until spring. Navigation in the white silence was a triumph of human endurance and observation, honed over hundreds of generations. The first elusive signs of approaching spring caused great excitement in the camp and set in motion the process of gradual preparation for a large-scale move. The change in the angle of the sun's rays and the first rare drops of meltwater from the tops of the tipis signaled the imminent end of the long, icy isolation. The wind shifted its usual direction, carrying the sense of thawing, damp earth, which were unmistakably recognized by all the experienced inhabitants of the plains. During this transitional period, the community began carefully counting their remaining food supplies and planning the routes for their upcoming long-distance spring migrations. Preparing vehicles for the spring mud season required a radical change in logistics and a complete abandonment of traditional toboggans. Melting snow and exposed mud made sliding impossible, so all cargo was redistributed onto travois, consisting of two long cross poles. These A-shaped frames easily navigated uneven terrain, deep puddles, and thickets without getting stuck in the sticky spring mud of the plains. Goods were carefully tied into tight, compact bundles with sturdy rawhide straps to prevent loss of property during jolts on difficult sections of the route. The transition from winter clothing occurred gradually as daytime temperatures began to consistently exceed the usual freezing levels. Heavy fur capes and thick leg coverings were cleaned, dried, and carefully stored in special leather cases until the next cold spell. People switched to lighter, breathable clothing made of thin suede, which did not restrict movement and prevented overheating in the sun. Footwear was also replaced. Instead of multi-layered winter moccasins with fur, they began wearing lightweight summer versions with stiff but thin waterproof soles. Leaving their long-term winter campsite, people left behind only cleared areas and the remains of abandoned wooden frames from their old dwellings. All household waste was carefully disposed of, and fire pits were covered with fresh soil as a sign of deep respect for the place that had sheltered them all winter. This tradition of minimal interference with nature allowed the land to recover quickly, so that in a few years it would once again be suitable for setting up camp. Gratitude toward the earth was not merely a beautiful ritual, but a conscious philosophy of sustainable use of nature, guaranteeing the survival of future generations. The reunification of scattered winter camps into vast spring settlements became the main social event after long months of isolation and struggle. People exchanged news, rejoiced at meeting distant relatives, and began preparing for large-scale collective hunts and traditional seasonal ceremonies. This transition from harsh survival to social prosperity symbolized life's victory over the icy breath of the endless plains winter. The experience accumulated over months of cold was carefully preserved in the elders' memories, so that the following year they could once again protect the tribe from the wrath of the snowy elements. We see that the lives of the indigenous peoples of the Great Plains in winter were an example of incredible adaptation and outstanding engineering ingenuity. Every detail of their daily life, from the shape of their dwellings to the recipe for dried meat, was dictated by harsh necessity and a deep respect for nature.